Hello, Mech fans. This is Duncan Fisher. Hold on firmly to your mana potions, fireballs, and familiars, because you are tuning in to your regularly scheduled episode of the First Circuit Podcast.
And with that, hello and welcome to episode 110 of the First Circuit Podcast. We, your hosts, hope you've had an amazing time spending hopefully time with your family or spending some time alone, and I hope you're relaxed and ready for the last few days of the year. Your hosts today feature this old guy, Old Bob.
Hello, Old Bob.
The much younger guy, Biter.
Blarg.
And myself, IanDresarie, the youngest guy here. As for topics today, we are mostly gonna talk about the developer update that happened at the time of the recording a couple days ago, between the No Guts No Galaxy crew and Russ Bullocks, where they talked about basically the launch of the game, some of the things they did in the following days, and some of their plans for the future. So that's kind of what we're gonna talk about and express our opinions.
Uh-oh.
Because
on this and more, basically.
Yeah. Well, and more, yes. Okay, so the whole thing started really weird, in my opinion. I don't know. You guys feel free to interrupt me if you have something to say, but I think the beginning of what they called the dev update was super weird because they started out and first off, Phil and Darren from NGNG go like, "Oh yeah, we've been playing your game so much," and Russ answers, "Oh gosh, yeah, I've seen your stream. You've done so great streaming this game." And they're like, "Yeah, we absolutely love your game." And they went on like this for 15 full minutes. 15 minutes of them praising each other before they got into the first topic thing. And I don't know, that's kind of contradictory to my definition of a developer update. Because they did no updating in those first 15 minutes. They just licked each other's butt cheeks.
Well, let's just say the first 15 minutes is, they're updating it as if it's just No Guts, No Galaxy themselves just talking to a general audience, giving their impression of the game and saying, "Oh, hey, we got Russ. Look at how pretty he is." But yeah, what we're interested in is, of course, what Russ had to say, some insights into the game, the developer part of it, which thankfully was the rest of the podcast. So yeah, I wish it started 15 minutes in, but let's just let people know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you plan on watching the update start 15 minutes later, you're still gonna have some butt licking and kissing, but it's not gonna be as bad as the first 15 minutes.
I agree. I agree. It was just weird. But that's how they do all their podcasts. If you actually listen to it, they talk about their life and what's going on and all that kind of stuff. We don't do that though. So Ian, how's your life doing today, man?
Hey, my life is doing great, Bob. And I fully agree that's NGNG style, but it's just kind of weird to call it PGI Dev Update.
It's a dev update.
Basically a NGNG podcast.
Yeah, I want to know everything there is to know about devs and what's going on with the game and stuff like that. But it's on their platform, so I guess that's what they got to do. But it was just kind of weird, though.
Let's not spend 15 minutes talking about them spending 15 minutes talking about.
So Biter, like, how far is it to your nearest store when you walk outside your house?
Can we not do this? But it's like 20 seconds. I have a superstore right next to me.
Okay.
I have one on the opposite side of the street.
I got one about 2 miles.
Because we're Europeans.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. The first thing that they kind of talked about in terms of the game was somewhat commenting on the reviews of the game, which I found was somewhat interesting because BGI fully acknowledges that some of the reviews were very positive and a lot of them were really negative and surprisingly negative. And the only thing I think Was didn't handle it quite perfectly, which is another thing of Was being not maybe the best person to do PR. He went on like, some of the reviewers just don't get it. They don't get the game. They don't get the setting. And while I think he's correct in that sense, because those reviewers are not people invested in Battletech Mechwarrior, it also that's one of your audience. You really shouldn't talk bad about part of your audience like that. And
it's classic Russ, but let's get to the meat and potatoes though. Did you guys read much in the way of reviews? Have you checked out the score on Metacritic?
I've checked out some scores, but I I started reading one of the review, and I got so incredibly triggered by that guy not knowing anything about the BattleTech universe that I just had to stop myself.
See, like that's the issue, though. That's the issue, that this game was actually built for mech fans like us, and we talked about this last episode, where it's not for a general audience. So when you get reviews of the game itself, you're talking to a bunch of journalists that don't know anything about BattleTech. They play a little bit, go, okay, this is kind of like, okay, this is weird, like whatever, and then they do the review, bad or good, but mostly actually bad because they don't know anything about it. That's the problem with the game that we were talking about last episode.
Yeah, but it's also if you look at the BattleTech reviews, a lot of those are similarly very triggering to me, and I haven't read a lot of them, especially those from people not familiar with the BattleTech universe. But even then, even though they don't really get the setting at the first glance, at the end they kind of say like, oh yeah, by the end of my whatever 8-hour review period, I kind of understood the setting. I kind of got into it. And that's something I don't think I've seen anyone write about Mechwarrior 5 yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree generally that most with even Harebrained Schemes BattleTech and Mechwarrior 5, it's a small niche game. It's not something that you would want to spend the full campaign playing through, which I don't know, like let's just say 20 hours, 40 hours, something like that, to actually play through
or like
a
50
large
to 60 probably.
If not more, yeah. Yeah. To really get into this game, like the intended experience is incredibly long. But these game reviewers, a lot of them, they're showing footage from the tutorial.
Yeah.
And so they all they can give is their impressions on the gameplay, the world, and the mech management sim. And it's all mostly going to be, of course, first impressions. There are a fair number of sites, though. The ones who give higher ratings are, of course, the ones who know the BattleTech setting, who have probably played Harebrained Schemes BattleTech and, in fact, reference it. So they know what they're getting into, and that's why they're quite favorable towards it. Whereas when you get the middling scores, some of them are saying, yeah, I'm kind of into the setting, but for me it didn't, it has a lot of flaws. And there's a fair number of reviews that, of course, just had no clue what the hell is going on, that this game did not reach out to them. And on average, the Metacritic review scores, at least at the time of recording, it's like 74 for the critics and 5.2 for user ratings. So a very middling game.
Yeah, that actually sounds similar to what we said last episode.
Yeah. So I'm agree with Ian, though, that it is obviously them just talking about first impressions, and my lasting impression is what I gave in the last podcast, just about the most fundamental thing to the game was just the flow of C-bills. Like that felt the biggest truth to the game, much more than the mech lab, much more so than weapon rarity or anything like that. It's just earn C-bills, spend C-bills. And you don't hear that in the reviews. And a lot of them praise the first-person shooting, and I think the initial tutorials don't throw hundreds of enemies at you, but late game, the issues of with the game could become stronger and stronger.
Yeah, but not to dive too much into it right now. Just this part of the AMA was talking about reviews, and I think it's good to hear that they acknowledge they have been negative reviews. They're not like, oh, no, the game is perfect, and they acknowledge that there are issues and that some people have issues with the game. So that's good. I just think WAS didn't do the best job of really handling that in a neutral and professional manner.
There's another angle to it, just to touch on briefly, was Rush talking about how this game has a Marmite kind of response. People love it and people hate it because they're not just following trends, they're not making another Fortnite and whatnot, or not making a casual experience. I fully agree. I'm very glad that they didn't, make this a casual, completely just copy the trends, do loot boxes and whatnot. Like, for all our criticisms of the game, it has none of that modern nonsense in it that it's so good that it is following in the path of Harebrained Schemes BattleTech, which also doesn't throw in loot boxes or constantly online or what have you. What I would say, though, is whilst he's like, oh, we're going off and doing our own thing, it's like, well, it's not that different. It's a management sim. it's a management sim paired with a first-person shooter kind of experience. Very, using very rough terms here. And the management sim thing, you've seen Harebrained Schemes Battletech, you see it in a whole bunch of sim games. And I think personally, at least, the sim aspect is the weaker part of it. Well, both parts have weaknesses to it, and a lot of the criticism people have for the game is due to the enemy spam and somewhat the unintuitive or restrictive managing your mech company.
Yeah.
Not make pay, but just managing your company. A lot of the reviews didn't really get it, and even if they did, they kind of realized it was kind of restrictive.
Yeah, and let's maybe dive slightly off onto the reactions on Twitter for the game, because that I found really interesting. What you said by that the game is polarizing, people either love it or hate it. That's something I totally saw on Twitter happen a lot. Like, obviously the people who really hate it are not really gonna be in my sphere because I like to stay positive.
Yeah.
But all the people were like, yeah, I love the game. The game is absolutely amazing. And I really think that many have these kind of how do you call it in English?
Polarized?
The glasses with the red where you don't see red
Rose-tinted,
flags.
Yeah, rose-tinted glasses.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I think many people have that, and I'm gonna be interested to see how the expression changes over the next coming weeks, to see if we're gonna develop that kind of middle group, which are like, yeah, the game is cool, but there are so many issues with it, kind of like me. Or if it's gonna stay this polarizing, if people are gonna stay polarized, or maybe they're gonna find some consensus at some point.
Actually, I'm with you on that. I think I stick in the middle group, a little bit higher in the middle group than anything else. I see problems, but I'm not gonna crap on the game like crazy like some people have, and those people I keep out of my Twitter feed because they're a bunch of like idiots. So I just basically it sucks though, because I was hoping for so much more, but yet I got less of what I was hoping for.
So on the positive side, it's been over a decade since the last Mechwarrior title, and I don't really necessarily want to see Piranha Games fail.
No.
On the other hand, of course, there are a lot of issues with the game, with Piranha Games, and there's some people who, with the history of Piranha Games, they'll shake their fist at anything they do.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Basically, what my issue is with the reactions to the game is, since it is so polarizing, PGI can either listen to the really positive people and overestimate how good their game is, or they can listen to all the crap they're getting from the loud minority that's really shitty to them and be like, okay, fine, we're not even gonna bother anymore. If you hate the game, just whatever, we're gonna do something else. And that's kind of what I'm somewhat afraid of, that it's gonna be hard for them to really find the middle ground of user feedback, which is gonna be, I like the game and this is how you can improve it.
Well, that's the middle ground.
Currently, that middle ground, that's currently hard to hear because the feedback is so very polarized.
Yeah, if I look at the Metacritic page of user reviews, somewhat, it puts the top ones with the most people found it useful. So the top ones are like 10, 9, 9, and then it jumps all the way down to 5, and then 4, 3, 2, and 0. It's just that there's a huge gulf in the middle. There's no 7s, 8s, or 6s, or anything like that. It's just people who love the game and people who say it's a really game.
Yeah. Well, I think most of it's too of the Epic Store and different things that they got quote lied to pretty much by like Russ about Steam, and I do think that Russ and them and PGI are actually listening to the middle tier. You got like I think it's Hototoken, and he's talking about different things they could improve and what they did and what's kind of like wrong with the game that they should have fixed. Stuff like that, but he's not like, you guys suck, because you guys didn't do this type thing, but he's actually doing it in a constructive manner, and that's what they are listening to. They're listening to, hey, the co-op, we're always disconnecting with the co-op, what's going on, that kind of thing. So they are listening to what's going on, and they're taking that feedback really, really well.
I think with this dev update, we'll get onto it later, but it's there's a lot of negative points about the game that Russ brings up and says we're working on it, or he admits the faults in the game. So yeah, I think that he, in the end, has listened to a fair amount of good feedback. He's not just saying,
Yes.
"Oh, all those people are haters. My game is perfect." He's in this AMA, and I think we should crack on with this. Is he goes on to say, "Yeah, we got this flaw, we got that flaw, and we are going to try this solution, that solution." I'm like,
let's just go straight into that. What opinions is of the game? He thinks combat is by far the strongest part of the game. I agree. The combat is by far the best part.
Yeah.
And he's saying that story is the weakest part.
I agree.
That I would somewhat disagree with. I think the customization for me personally is the weakest part of the game, but that's again personal preference. And
the story is the most obviously
the story is the
flawed
weakest
part.
The story is interesting, and he went on to say like, yeah, we know the story is the weakest part. We only got to work on the story like the last year or so, and at that point, I just went like, what? You're doing a Mechwarrior game.
Yeah.
And story is kind of an afterthought for you. And he went on like, yeah, I mean, we've had this management sim, we had this great sandbox experience, but our testers were like, we kind of need a story. It's kind of bland and repetitive and stuff. So they just put in a story in the last year, and characters were developed during the last 6 months, he said. And that's just something that's, in my opinion, not something you can do in the Battletech universe. Something that all Battletech offers always agree on is Battletech is a franchise driven not by the setting, not by what's going on. It's driven by characters. And that's the reason why so many people dislike the Dark Age era novels, because those characters are forgettable. They get their standalone novel and then they're out the window. And that's what made classic Battletech great, these amazing characters that you stay with for decades in the story. So making a game set in the Battletech universe and having story as an afterthought, that's really rough in my opinion. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Well, yeah, you're right. Basically, I mean, when like Natasha Kerensky died, I'm like, holy cow! Like when I read that book, I'm like, holy crap, she died. She's dead. The person that actually started in 1984 with Wolf Dragoons, it's like, holy cow, this person's dead. Or Jamie Wolf, and like when he died from nuclear explosion, basically in when World of Blood, I think it was World of Blood came, right? And killed him.
When they just nuked the whole planet. That was such a major event. Like,
it's just
crap, the character's dead, and it's starting everything.
That is like holy mackerel. When all the different guys are out there. Handsome Rough Riders. I forgot his name actually. When he died too, it's like, oh, that's my favorite Merc unit. So when he died, it's like, oh man, that sucks. Type thing. And when you read these kind of things, and then you go to Mechwarrior 5, it's like, I don't care. I don't care about your story. I don't really get anything about it. Oh, my father died. Okay.
Yeah, and since we were on the characters, just real quick, but I'm gonna let you speak. The voice acting is something I wanted to quickly touch on, because I think the voice acting is mostly really good, and the voice actors are doing an within the setting okay job. And the character Fahad, your mech tech, is my prime example of terrible character development, because I love the voice actor. I just love the Scottish accent. It's so incredibly great. I could listen to this guy for hours, just ramble about stuff. But the character Fahad is so bland and forgettable. And the worst part is the story forces you to listen to his one-liners. Like, there's gonna be a story mission where it's like, speak to Fahad. Then you speak to him and he's like, "Oi, mate, you really busted up those mechs last mission, didn't you? Eh? Hope you bring them back in better shape next time." And that's it.
Yeah.
And you can't skip those lines, and you have to stand there for 2 minutes listening to him, and that's a story mission. And
well,
it gets into the final product. The presentation, because obviously they kind of rushed it, is very simple. So a lot of times the characters are all just sort of standing there like mannequins, and you walk up to them, and they don't really move, emote, or anything like that. It's just a mouse flap, and you go. The big classic example is just you go through the whole opening sequence, and then you have to go up to the bridge and to just stand there and have people talk at you for like 2 or 3 minutes, and you're just sitting at a table. You can look around, and that's it. It's the presentation is very weak, but obviously that's a consequence of them spending majority of their time building a big sandbox and then chucking this in last minute. They don't have time, or all the animations and stuff of having people walking around or interactive cutscenes is obviously way beyond the scope of what they can do.
Well, Oh, like, I was gonna say like who's the guy that's on the table that they got a really famous actor for? Basically he.
Elias Tufexis. He's been playing in The Expanse, which by the way is the best sci-fi series currently on TV.
Yeah, definitely.
Got a new season on Amazon Prime. Check it out.
Okay.
And he also voiced the big baddie in BattleTech.
Yeah.
So he's a fan of the universe, and he actively asked to be in Mechwarrior 5.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yes, he did.
Okay.
And that kind of leads me to the next point, because he actively asked to be Mechwarrior 5, and then his role is and it's such a difference between his voice acting and everyone else, because everyone else is kind of like ambient sound. They kind of sound like they're actually with you in a room. And then you have Elias Tufexis, who clearly recorded in a super high-end voiceover studio.
Yeah.
And it totally breaks immersion because his voice is so much clearer. There's no background noise whatsoever. It's so perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other voice acting, and it's so different. It's really interesting.
It's a little jarring, yeah.
Well, I was gonna say though, he's like the only voice that I actually like in the whole thing. Like everyone else is kind of just bland, I think.
The biggest voice.
Well, especially like when he pops in, he's just a hologram figure that doesn't even move his lips. You just have like a sound bar going. Then also like your mercenary, I guess second lieutenant, can't pronounce Capellan's right. Like during the campaign, and so like I'm like, like I heard that going, what? So
what did she say?
What's her name again? Because I think
I forgot her name.
Because she Rihanna is a really big voice in the game, because she's the one who says, "All right, time to start the mission. Well done, mission complete." And she gives it does a lot of the exposition in this game. On the matter of you bring up earlier was just it seems so wrong to you that they put story in a year, the last year basically. I think in my mind I'm like thinking of two paths. One is very story heavy, which is linear campaign. You're a foot soldier taking part in a war, and you have lots of work to establish the setting, establish your place within the army, and give lots of linear linear series of single player missions. I imagine that could totally work with your description of people loving stories in BattleTech. But obviously the big contention I have with that is just it's Piranha Games we're talking about, and they have nobody like that, and nobody in their studio who can really present things like that. They're going to be much better suited to making a big, broad sandbox experience. And even for the talented people, Harebrained Schemes, the biggest complaint I would have would somewhat be their story. Because they also, both of these are small studios, and for them, producing enough single player content is a huge amount of work. Whereas producing an auto-generated sandbox experience means you can have a game that on the box has 80 hours, 100 hours of gameplay, rather than 5 hours of consistent story. So I think it makes sense for them to go the sandbox route. And particularly if you're Russ, you don't want to spend money on any story stuff until you know that you actually have a game that's worth shipping. Because this is Piranha Games.
Okay, I agree partially. I'm like, you're totally right. The sandbox experience should absolutely be the focus of Mechwarrior 5. But for me, the decision, like just randomly decide in the last year, okay, we're gonna have a story, whereas for the first years of development, you're like, okay, we're not gonna really do a story. That's weird to me. For me, it should be like at the beginning you decide, do you want to present a story? If so, you think roughly what should the story be like. Okay, we're gonna do this and that's the rough story, and we're gonna figure out details later on, but we're committed, this is the story kind of deal. But what they did is, in the beginning, they were like, okay, we're committing to no story. But then last year, they were like, maybe we should do a story. And then they just threw something together. That's, by the way, the story of Mechwarrior 5, that might be a spoiler, I hope it's not, is basically copy-paste of the first 3 BattleTech novels. Decision at Thunder Rift following up to, following the Grace and Death Charlie story. That's Mechwarrior 5 copies that, 1-to-1.
Well, most of the game is a copy from different other games and everything else. So
I'm not saying that the other games were unique, except Mechwarrior 3. Mechwarrior 3 was pretty unique, I think.
Yeah. But yeah,
but it's a straight up copy of a novel.
Story is what makes actual BattleTech, at least in my own opinion. It's what makes me excited about a game is the story itself. Like in BattleTech from Harebrained Schemes, I know some of you don't like it here, but I actually liked it. It was like I felt I was part of something, doing something, for the story and for different things going on.
Well, I think the story is it's fine enough. I'm just saying it's one of the weaker aspects.
Oh yeah.
When you actually look at it with a critical eye.
Absolutely.
But I think in the end, though, they spent a lot of effort on all those cutscenes and having story missions that build up around a story. There's actually a story to get your teeth into that they're presenting, and there's a lot of different changes that I really like. Like I'm trying to think, if I'm a Russ and I have really limited resources, what would be the best way to go forward? And honestly, that's a really difficult question, and I think you could do a whole podcast on it. But the simplest thing I would just say first off is if you have limited resources, I really like in Harebrained Schemes BattleTech at the beginning, you say where you came from and what happened to your family and what happened.
Yeah.
Like a lot of Harebrained Schemes BattleTech is text-based. And that way, with it being text-based with not voiceovers, you can have somebody just go in, write the script. You can add all those tooltip things. People can read it at their own pace, and you can change the story more easily to your character's backstory or the decisions they've done. And moving forward, I think that's way better than what they went with, which was in-game cutscenes and lots of standing next to people as they give you long speeches about stuff. I think they're trying to, do things, that a triple A game would do. If you had a triple A Mechwarrior 5 title, something the production level of Call of Duty, you would want fully voiced cutscenes, dialogue with characters, people walking around the mech lab, full animation rigs for everyone, lots of crazy things you could do. But obviously, we don't have the resources for that. And if you're strapping this in last minute, I don't know, like the choice to have audible dialogue means they have to write the script quickly and record it, in advance. They need time to implement all this, which in the end is probably why we got what we sort of did. Like that first mission, particularly the opening cutscene, it just looks so rudimentary because, obviously you would want lots of weather effects. I mean, it's just the time for dramatic rain and fog and things just to hide the fact that there's just 5 mechs standing in a field kind of deal, and it explains why they kind of bumble into one another. But in the end, they just don't have the time or resources or artistic flair to get all this together. And I think 1 year to do this, you're never really going to produce a really good product. But I can understand why Piranha Games took that route, and I can understand why it's not. I don't think they ever really had the talent or resources to make a good story.
That could be true.
All right, moving on. Next thing was touched on was difficulty. He didn't go too much in depth. He was just like, okay, the game is supposed to be hard. We've been hearing a lot of feedback. Game is too hard. Game is too easy. And he talked a bit about the difficulty of balancing out that the game is probably going to most appeal to the core audience that has played Mechwarrior Online, which is inherently going to be much better than the general audience who've never played a mech game before. So he talked about balancing being hard. And he just said, the game is supposed to be hard, which, okay, that's a decision they made. I don't have much to add. The really interesting tidbit.
Yeah.
The really interesting tidbit he said there was difficulty scales in co-op. The more human player you have, the better the enemy AI gets. Like they're not increasing like number of enemies or stuff when you take on co-op missions, but they're increasing some hidden behind the scenes stats, which I think they call lethality, which for example means how likely is that enemy mech to hit your face rather than just your arm. Stuff like that.
The more they aim for weakened components or critical components, the more they try and destroy Oldbobs Hunch and the Hunchback.
Yeah, my right side.
My gut feeling on Mechwarrior 5 is just simply they at least initially took that approach. We want to make it hard, so we're just going to do the throw lots of enemies approach. We're not going to make the game more smart. We're going to make it more spammy. And that's what leads us into the issues where there's not somebody saying we need to improve the radar system, we need to spread out the maps and have like a sort of a recon of the area so players can choose, you know, what bases to take on or what kind of enemy forces are around, or you bumping into patrols or things like that. It's not that kind of scale. It's much more a small little sandpit you're thrown into and you just charge into the fray. And that's, in my opinion, a bit lazier way to design mission design, and that kind of restricts the game, particularly when it comes to mission types.
I agree. And that's another thing that was said way later on in the podcast. He doesn't see an issue with the number of targets. He, in fact, sees that as a balanced option. So that's a piece of feedback that he hasn't really understood or accepted from us, that the number of enemies is too high, because he still talks about that maybe there should be a slider to put in more enemies. And I'm like, no, please
No
no.
way.
Give me a slider to reduce the number and put up their lethality stats or double their armor. Give me that kind of option. Please don't get more enemies in there.
Well, BattleTech does, from my Heartbreaking Schemes, they actually make it so either the armor's by half or it's a full robot type thing, like it's a full mech, so they balance the scale that way. As far as difficulty, I've been seeing a lot of tweets from people saying, hey, I need help on this level 60 mission or 70 like mission. So they grab like a couple of us and then we all jump in and go help out whoever needs help. So it is tough. It is very tough, especially if you're using AI guys. I had missions that I tried 4 times and said, screw this, I'm getting some friends to go help out so my AIs doesn't run in front of the 16 mechs coming towards me or something like that. So I mean, it does scale. It does, it is hard. It is very hard. And I'm only at level 70 missions, and I'm having a hell of a hard time with 270 tonnage.
Ideally, though, not everyone wants to have friends, or not everyone will be playing this game. So many people will be playing this game years in the future, and you want it to be able that you should always solo be able to complete it. Part of that, like Ian described last podcast, that all the objectives were in this big, in this narrow valley, and when he shot the objective, they all came coming out, and it was a huge duck hunt. But the thing is, if he just ran into the bases, he would get absolutely slaughtered. I wish there was more instances like that where if you change your tactical approach in a single player environment, you can win. You can change how the situations play out. More so than just cheesing the game and sitting on top of a hill with a sniper weapons and just whittling down the enemy because they keep exposing. Like I saw plenty of times at long range, sort of like a VIP mission. I think I was watching Old Bob, and it's like there's a AC-20 Hunchy, and it's just running backwards and forwards and just getting shot to pieces, and he's not returning fire because he's out of range, and it's just, dude, either close in or take cover.
Exactly.
But there's a lot of things they got into difficulty-wise. I think the next point on our list was talking about Iron Man mode and options in the future to change how salvage works. It got a bit muddled between them, but basically, Russ agreed that we should add these kind of options into the game. That Iron Man mode having just one save, that you keep your progress. The only thing is with Iron Man is the game's built to be hard. And I'm not a fan of a game that's built to be hard that you only have one save with, because it can feel unfair.
Iron Man is gonna be really tough for campaign missions. I think Iron Man is fine for story missions where you can actively choose to not do this mission, but campaign missions with Iron Man, I feel like because maybe something like what XCOM did with Bondsman, where you had, I think you had one save at the beginning of the mission you could roll back to.
Yeah,
that kind of thing would be fine.
With XCOM, actually, they did have situations, so it would save at the end of every turn, like that. True Iron Man. I remember that for XCOM 1. Yeah.
I have not played True Iron Man for campaign in XCOM.
Yeah, that's pretty scary though. Particularly if you play on the hardest difficulties. Like you are on a knife's edge. And I've watched some YouTubers who actually play through on that, and it's amazing how, they they have to play with cards and just see how things go. I think as you mentioned, just story missions are built. They did mention are built to be extra hard compared to regular missions, which I think was a complaint people had. And I'm not the biggest fan of that. I think I prefer sort of Harebrained Schemes method where they're actually on average easier to get onto the next stage of things. Those, in fact, the really hard missions of Harebrained Schemes BattleTech were the story missions were some of the least favorite ones I had to do. There was one with the explosive crates. I think was yeah, that one, you have very little room to initially maneuver, and there's a lot of enemies towards you. The explosive crates can really help you out, but you know that instinct you have where you have to complete all the objectives, and they keep spawning these trucks that are really tanky, and there's just turrets, enemies shooting at you. You've only got a lance of mediums, and you're up against like 2 or 3 other enemy lancers. That mission, it's doable, but it's hell. And it's much more fun when there's like a Nava mission as well, where it's like, there's a barracks nearby, and you've got to they're going to try and send mechs to kill the people there. And that one, at that point, I had all assault mechs, and because I knew the mission objective at the start, I have one assault mech that has to sprint every turn to get to that final objective. And I was lucky they were fully skilled out, so their sprint distance was increased. But yeah, for me, that kind of game design is not fun, not fulfilling.
Okay, so yeah, difficulty.
Yeah.
At least one thing that there's not going to be a single slider to change difficulty. That's something he was fairly adamant about, which I agree with. A single slider wouldn't do the game justice. Yep. I however think there should be options to change certain things. Again, like BattleTech is doing, where you can adjust small stuff within the campaign that's going to adjust your overall difficulty by a certain bit.
Change payout, change chance of mechs being salvageable, changing salvage shares, etc. Just tailor the experience to how you would like it, and just give us a whole box of options.
Yes.
You want to notice what I just thought of that we've been talking about for the last couple episodes is literally we're like, why can't it be like HBS BattleTech?
Yeah. I had a sample earlier. I was like, Mechwarrior 5 is basically marketing for BattleTech.
Yeah.
Because every time we're saying something Mechwarrior 5 does wrong, we're like, go ahead and play BattleTech because BattleTech does it right.
Yeah, basically we're like,
yes.
Yeah, that's generally like what we're saying, but it's like, why can't it be like BattleTech but have first person shooter type thing? Because a lot of people don't like the the turn move type thing. They want to do a first person shooter. So if they actually took BattleTech management system, customization system, everything, put it into Mechwarrior 5, it was like, yes. Like, yes.
I mean, they've shown Piranha Games the way, so to speak. Because obviously, Harebrained Schemes BattleTech has been out for some time. A lot of things like flashpoints and this, that, and
story,
more options
lore.
were things they added in. Well, story was in the beginning, but I'm just saying more options for Iron Man mode, how much salvage and pay you get. They added that in later. Yeah. So we're comparing a game that's had many months of post-launch development to a game that's just launched.
True. Yeah. But also we're comparing it to a game that technically had the chance to look at the other game and be like, okay, they've learned those lessons. Let's take over those lessons because they apply to us.
And literally like HBS, I mean, they have a very positive score on Steam. Everyone loves that game. Everybody loves that game.
And I mean, like from HBS, don't just copy their game, copy their people.
Yeah.
The Harebrained Schemes are so cool. They're open. They communicate. Mitch is so enthusiastic whenever he does marketing. Just take a look at those guys and see what they're doing right and try to do that.
Although I have to say whoever is on the Twitter account for Mechwarrior 5, like Mercenaries, doing a damn good job. They're actually responding. We'll check into it. They're making up jokes. They're actually like a very good Twitter account. Whoever's doing it is doing a good job.
Yeah,
I have to say.
Yeah, that's another thing. A couple episodes ago, I said like, okay, for the Mechwarrior 5 Twitter account, it's basically dead.
Yeah.
Go ahead and take a look at the Paradox Twitter account, what they're doing, and copy that. And they're kind of doing that, so it's quite improved.
Doing a good job, man. Good job.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else to add, or should we move on to the next thing?
I think difficulty is
next
fine.
point, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Next point was talked a bit about the spawning, because the spawning of enemies was one of the major complaints people had about the game at launch. And he talked a bit about like, usually spawning could get pretty bad. Worst case would be an enemy spawning 250 meters distance right behind you and immediately start blasting you. They've patched that fairly fast. So again, they were spawning to feedback, which is good. The current worst case would be 600 meter-ish behind you. And one of the limiting factors they're having is the fact that they're doing a line of sight check at unit spawn, which, by the way, totally explains the fact that the game is lagging like crazy whenever units spawn in, because they're doing a full line of sight check, which I think might be somewhat overkill, but okay.
It's one of those times I feel like sometimes involved in programming where you sort of think, oh, I'll try the most universally easy solution, which is just randomly put it on the map just close enough to the player but not within line of sight. I'm like, okay, yeah, that does make some sense, but it does become it's obviously algorithmic and it doesn't feel that intuitive. A simpler solution is simply as part of your map design, you would have something akin to enemy reinforcements always come from this highway. Like this is where reinforcements flow in. That way it gives a flow to maps, something like that, akin to that. Like oddly enough, just giving a single spawn point, the enemy come from this area and drive a little bit along this road, can give a much better feeling to a map than this auto-generated spawning system. And that's the difference in how they design games.
Just you use the dropship system way more and drop your vehicles out of a dropship. And that way you don't have any spawning issues whatsoever. The only thing you have to spawn in are like VTOLs, and those can fly from range distance.
I've seen them
you
fly
don't have to spawn them close.
Yeah.
So dropship.
It all factors into your mindset of what kind of experience are you trying to carve with this game. As we said, they took the throw enemies at you approach, and they've taken the simple just algorithmically figure out where to spawn them where it's not obvious that they're just spawned behind a mountain. It's just okay, that works, but it just feels awful because you've got constantly just tanks randomly spawning behind you and shooting you in the back, even if it's at long range. You cleared that area. It doesn't give a feeling of that's why at least sometimes where you have the enemies always spawn from one location situation, it makes the enemy's attacks on you consistent, that you can figure out, okay, the enemy are constantly reinforcing from this area, and if I go over here and I clear this area, there won't be enemies coming from that direction. It doesn't help with that feeling. But at least they are improving. They aren't spawning an SRM carrier 270 meters behind you.
You know how many times it happened to me, man? I'll be sitting there and then, what the hell hit me? It's like, Jesus. Yeah.
But again, soundscape, it can still happen that they sneak up on you.
Just one last thing. I wanted to throw this in somewhere. We mentioned like the edge of the map. Have either of you tried to escape the map?
Yeah, it turns red.
Yes, it's kind of annoying. There's a red.
Yeah. For a game that's trying to go for immersion or whatnot, that super sci-fi red barrier.
It's even worse because one of the campaign missions I just did, you landed on a farm area, and then there was a city area, and between that was kind of a mountain ridge, which was totally passable even with assault mechs, but there was a barrier up there. Like a red barrier. Even though it was in the middle of the map, there was a red barrier, so I had to go through the pass because the map was designed that people should go through there, which is fine, but then just make it a unpassable mountain ridge rather than throwing a red barrier up there.
Well, that's a lazy way to actually go and do barriers, though. Like most of the time they do like big ass walls or gigantic mounted ranges or something.
The map design is often a box canyon. The problem with the box canyon is you always just have walls around you. Smaller. I would say I'm not so opposed to the idea of there being an invisible wall. What I'm opposed to is the art design of this kind of red sci-fi. You've gone up against the barrier. There's electric field. It's just that's even just you bumped into nothing, and the game gave you no indication other than a little thing just saying out of bounds. It's like, okay, I got it. There's only so much of the map they can render. This sci-fi wall thing is just so out of place.
Or you could just do what Mechwarrior did, where the maps are somewhat infinite and you can just walk forever. There's just nothing going on around you.
True.
They continued the ground texture, but obviously the map ended, so there was nothing else there, but you could keep walking forever. I've done that when I was really bored. I just put my joystick, max throttle, and I let it run for a while. And I came back to it, and it's still working.
I like that in Thunder Brigade as well. In fact, with the map editor, you could put things out in that infinite space. So if you just wanted flat ground or things that come from off map, you could place them just so far away in the space surrounding the map.
Okay.
All right, but since we were talking about spawning, one thing that was finally clarified is the fact that infinite spawning only happens in demolition missions, and obviously Warzone once you clear those first number of people. That's really good to know, because it means you can indeed take the relaxed approach on stuff like raid missions, where we weren't quite certain was it a infinite spawning or not. Or,
it's kind of that problem you have in Call of Duty campaigns sometimes. People often complain there's infinite spawners, and it's like, oh, actually, if you kill 50 enemies from this one door, they will stop. Because on the hardest difficulty, they one-shot you. So in Call of Duty, it's good to know that you can cleanse the land slowly, but surely.
The land. Well, Russ did say there's like patrols out there too, so basically it might spawn a couple guys, but not like infinite spawning thing.
Exactly. Like it's, I think the best to see that is in raid missions. In raid missions, you can walk to smaller outposts that you don't have to destroy, but they're on the map. And when you get close enough, some mechs pop up, some turrets pop up. Or once you kill a certain objective, there's going to be a dropship coming in behind you, dropping off a couple of cicadas, stuff like that. But it's not infinite. You can clear it if you.
Hold on, there's infinite cicadas. Don't you know that? They're all over the place.
Apparently cicadas are infinite. Oh god, cicadas are so annoying.
That's the most done mech in Mechwarrior 5 ever.
And it's the mech you want the least, and it's the mech you care about the least, because it's so you can just ignore it. It does nothing.
Yeah.
But it's just it's gonna annoy you for the next hour.
Exactly. Okay.
All right. And one thing that kind of belongs to spawning is performance. This is a direct quote from Russ. Performance, I don't have a lot to say in regard to that. So basically, he kind of followed up that he thinks performance is fine. The game is running fine. It's not perfect, but it's fine. And that kind of tells me that they don't plan on really improving performance or maximizing what you can get out of the game, which I hope they change their opinion about that, because what I mentioned in the last episode with my GPU being at 100% in the Mac lab, that's not sustainable long term.
My my impression was he said it works fine enough, but he was just saying I don't have much to say in regards to that because he's not an engineer. He isn't working in the guts.
He's a business part, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So I got the impression that they wouldn't be doing a lot of.
He at least in this update, he isn't giving a huge impression that they're going to do a lot performance improvements. I'll give you that. I'm just saying my impression was he's saying it just as the CEO rather than as an engineer. He said that's not my area of expertise.
I mean, as far as performance, it runs pretty good on my machine. I only had 3 crashes, but I guess my machine's a little bit different.
Only 3.
Yeah. But I have like.
I mean, crashes are also not necessarily performance. Crashes are something that is special and shouldn't happen.
Bob, which crashes more often, Mechwarrior 5 or Mechwarrior Online for you?
Wow. Hold on. Mechwarrior Online had a little bit more, but we're talking only like 3 or 4 out of like the 8 years I've been playing it. So.
Well, the rate then for MWO is way better.
Yeah. But the whole thing is, like, I could run MWO at medium graphics and not skip or anything compared to what I run on here, which is high, and I don't skip or anything. So it's a little bit different as far as performance-wise for my machine.
Okay. Yeah, for my machine, I have an RTX 2070, which should be way better than what Bob has, but for some reason I'm completely unable, even lowest setting, to get a stable 60 FPS stream.
I haven't
even without stream, I can't get 60 FPS.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything for like FPS for my machine running it though, but I don't have a problem shooting or doing things, so I have no clue yet.
Okay, so realistically, you're gonna have at least those 30 FPS fairly stable, right?
Yeah. Okay. But who knows?
Yeah, all we could do is hope and try and give our feedback to PGI that performance is some area that they should work on. They shouldn't just always leave it like
no.
as an afterthought.
Okay, so we have AI with the use of jump jets.
They talked about AI. I'll be completely honest. The only thing I wrote down for AI is that AI doesn't use jump jets except to follow the player.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yep. They talked more about AI, but I didn't write anything down.
Okay. So people are saying, why doesn't the AI use jump jets tactically? Like jump on top of a building and use that as a firing platform. kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And as it is, they said, we just don't have that kind of performance, anything like that programmed in. We do sort of plan to have the AI use their jump jets in the future, particularly if they get stuck or whatnot. That's an obvious addition. But right now, they will never use their jump jets unless the player jumps up on top of something and the AI to follow them says, okay, I figured out the path. Because right now, the mesh that they use to figure out where to go, I forget what the term is for it. Because the AI basically, they look at the map as a chessboard, basically, and they move from spot to spot. And right now, they only think as a pawn. They don't think like a horsey.
A horsey? You mean a knight?
Yeah, that was an interesting tip, but they had that. There is mesh under the buildings.
Yes.
So even on defense mission, your mechs might go through buildings if they prioritize staying in formation over protecting the buildings, which I found interesting.
Yeah, that was that. Yeah, I was going to bring that up next. Yeah, that is why they're walking through the buildings. That they don't care about the objectives as much as staying near Senpai.
Yeah. So if you want to avoid that, current workaround is just send them to a fixed position and tell them to hold there. In that case, they're not gonna go through buildings.
Yeah. But yeah, I think he does somewhat acknowledge that people have brought up the AI, that they're not fully satisfied with the AI, like them walking through buildings being the most obvious flaw, and that's why he's saying we're going to work on it. We're going to work on making more use of your mechs, bits and pieces and whatnot. So yeah, hopefully in the future the AI will play better into it.
Hopefully.
Interesting tidbit. He confirmed that AI tools are not going to be part of the modding tools they provide.
Really? Mm-hmm. I didn't hear that.
Yes.
Kind of sucks.
I missed that bit.
Yeah, I missed that part.
Yeah, he specifically said that because I think Phil asked maybe AI is something the community can optimize and was like, no, I don't think we're going to be supplying the AI tools.
All right.
Which brings us up to the next topic.
I mean, it makes some sense because the tools, the kind of environment you use to program AI is usually very expensive to license. So that's probably the main reason, but still it's kind of annoying that you
Did we ever figure out what as far as when mods come out, do I have to upload your mods to play in your game?
No.
And
nothing yet.
Okay, nothing yet. Okay, I'm just curious just how that will work as far as like if I have a bunch of mods in my game and you jump in my game, you have to go and use my mods or what happens basically.
Yep. Well, one thing we know for a fact, since Epic won't have mod integration, it's not like in Steam where you join a game, Steam tells you, okay, you're gonna need these mods to join, and it automatically downloads for you. That's not gonna be a thing.
Yeah.
If you need the mods to play with the host, you have to download them manually. That's something we can say for certain.
It's going to be done more old school.
It's going to be very old school. Or who knows? Maybe the game is really smart and you don't need to install the mods on all the clients. But I doubt that.
We can only hope.
I don't. Yeah, and speaking of Epic, the next thing he announced he announced that they were planning to get the editor, so the modding tools, out to the community on the day after the podcast, which obviously hasn't happened. So the next day for release for the modding tools is going to be in early January. Reason for that being is that they send it to Epic tiny bit too late, so it's now hung up at Epic side because obviously Epic also has holidays and stuff like that. So that's kind of a bummer because it means modding tools are going to be delayed until January after the holidays, which means modders won't have the holidays to get going, and yeah, mods are going to be greatly delayed thanks to that.
Future updates.
Yeah, so for the next segment, I kind of wrote down everything was where I was in between said like, this might be something we look at for the next patch, or this might be something we're looking at for a DLC, and I think we can quickly go over the update stuff. One thing he definitely said is they wanted to have your co-op partner edit your mechs. And that's like one of the really big things, and they already put that out. So great job, PGI. I'm not saying this often, but you did really well. You listened to feedback, you implemented what people were asking for, and you pushed it out really fast. So thank you, PGI. That was a great addition to co-op.
And to know that what we're talking about, if I would have joined Ian's game, I would have been sitting there for 20 minutes while Ian's min-maxing the mech that I'm piloting. Now I can actually do it myself. I could jump in and go and edit the stuff. I could look at different things on his board and all that kind of stuff and see what's going on.
Let's do a game of telephone with, okay, Bob, what build do you want? Okay, this is the mech. Here are the hard points. This is the equipment I have spare. Tell me what to change. And it's just adds so much time, particularly when you've got a group of 4. Even if all of you are, know what you're doing with Mech Lab, it takes a while for you all to talk out your builds.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's still not perfect. You have to go up to the bridge in order to access the console, and only then you can start fixing up mechs and stuff like that. But it's definitely a very much improvement.
True.
And I'm looking forward to seeing what else they do with co-op in the future.
And I'm glad, because he does mention, we need to improve the co-op experience by doing changes like this and more in the future. Because one thing we sort of noticed right away was obviously, even if you had the option to edit your mechs, it's like you've done that, and the first person, the person who you joined a session, the single player, they're fiddling around the map, selecting contracts and stuff, and everyone else can't see what's going on. They in fact are just standing around in the mech lab, just looking at the mannequins and just
trying to jump on other people's heads.
Right now the only fun we have is trying to jump on each other's heads. There's nothing to do in the dropship.
Yeah.
All right.
And since this game, it's one of its biggest selling points is co-op. You do want something to keep people occupied with, even just the most basic rudimentary things. I said, like, just add boxes that you could pick up in the mech lab, because you could throw it at each other. You could build little towers and just add more to the jumping on each other's head game. Because right now, that's the only option.
That would be funny. I would definitely say, do that. Like, that's a mod for all the modders out there, by the way.
Like, if you think the classic Skyrim experience, you want to find a basket and put it on people's heads so that they can't see you.
Exactly.
Like, it would be great just to you put all the boxes on the briefing table and then start the story mission. The main player's just stuck there listening to the monologues, and everyone's just laughing at how he's just got boxes in front of him and people running around causing mayhem.
I don't know if that's the best approach, but what we suggested last episode would be like an arcade machine, or in the launch, an arcade machine where you can just play Tetris or Snake or ping pong, which are super easy to program. Shouldn't be much resource from BGI side to put something like that in, and that's kind of what we're hoping for.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Beyond that, they definitely said that patches are going to slow down once they fixed all of the major issues currently. They're looking at one very major patch in January, because they're contractually obligated to do some NVIDIA stuff. Hint, hint, hint. Ray tracing. Hint, hint, hint. Maybe we'll see ray tracing in January. And beyond that, they're obviously doing more crash fixes. They talked a bit about secondary objectives, which should be expanded to be more consistent and be featured in more missions. They talked a bit about repair options, something like the repair all button for all of your mechs, where it's like going through and you click repair all, and all the repairs are going to be done in one go, except of course for equipment replacement. Or maybe there might even be a system where it pops up and says, okay, this mech has a broken weapon. What do you want to replace it with? They talked a bit about that, and they're looking at that for a future update. Yeah. And the other thing that's kind of in the update category is virtual reality. That's something that honestly wasn't too much in my head during development, but now that the game is out, Russ is talking a fair bit about virtual reality, so to me it sounds like he really wants to do it. And it would be the kind of head tracking in the cockpit kind of deal. So you play mouse keyboard on your PC, mission starts, you reach over, take your virtual reality headset, put it on your head, and you can watch everything happen in virtual reality.
Be kind of cool.
It's something that people expressed interest in, so it's like, yep, that's certainly something we could do. Makes sense. One thing, have any of you guys checked or tested, in MWO, when you press the accelerator, the guy's arm will actually move forward? Is that in Mechwarrior 5 yet?
I don't even think you can look that far down at your character.
Even looking at other people, I don't think that happens, actually.
Because at least, because nobody actually tries to look around that much, because I'm just watching it secondhand. But for me, when I went to, I played the MechCon demo, you could look far down enough, and you could do that because there's like the free look button. It used to be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah, right, free look, yeah.
Yeah, I use free
Cool.
look, and I looked down at the Metcon demo, and your pilots are stock still. There's no animations down there, and I was curious whether they had actually added anything like that. Because when you do the startup sequence, I forget now. Like in MWO, your pilot actually leans forward and presses buttons.
Well, startup sequence, yes. Like I was doing a video like earlier, and I used the startup sequence for that, and basically he does do the cockpit and does the buttons and all that stuff for the startup sequence. Yeah.
So they might have done the animations, but yeah, that's the thing as a second-hand observer is it's kind of hard to check out these minor little details that MW has, and I don't know about MW5.
So it is there. So future DLCs.
Yeah, so there's the question of the future of the game. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, one quick note regarding virtual reality. Was mentioned that to make virtual reality really work, they have to get 60 FPS on 2 screens, because otherwise you're gonna get some real motion sickness. I can tell you, it is not fun.
Yep.
Play 10 minutes with 30-ish FPS on virtual reality, and you're gonna be over your toilet puking, because it's really bad. It's really bad. So yeah, that's just something to really quickly throw in. If they want to do virtual reality, they'll have to do a lot of performance tweaking. So it's not gonna be something that many people are going to use.
Though if they improve the quality of the game through one means or another, I would be happy. So let's push them to everyone pretend to be interested in having VR for Mechwarrior 5.
Hey, VR,
Yeah, so
go
they're
ahead.
forced to tweak performance.
Yes.
Right. And then they started talking a bit about what the future might hold, what kind of DLCs they would do. Like just some of the things where was said, yeah, this is the candidate for DLCs would be maps and biomes. Cool. The quest system might be a DLC option to just get a bunch of additional quests. Mission types. And they quickly mentioned that, yes, escort is something that wouldn't be opposed
to. The AI is 100% better than MechWarrior Online, so I think they can do it.
I see no issues. I think escort could work well.
Yeah.
Max would obviously be a DLC rather than a free update, because they need equipment, like obviously the high equipment like water Rokne and stuff like that, but also mask.
But yeah, there's a fair number of mechs that aren't in the game because
kind
of the equipment not being available and systems not implemented, like mask. Right now, there's
rope.
Yeah. Well,
so
what's the point in sensors? You can only see this small little code in front of you.
I mean, if the enemy shuts down, you keep your sensor lock on them.
Have you ever seen them shut down?
I have not ever seen an enemy shut down.
No, actually, I have. Actually. They have shut down. Yeah,
how many flamers did it take? Did it take 3 flames?
No, actually, the guy was shooting PPCs at me, so he did shut down for some dumb reason. Yeah,
did you use sensor lock, or were you able to keep him targeted?
I don't recall that. I just shot him, basically.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I vaguely recall it. I think you lose sensor lock, so you lose, just like an MWO, you lose track of how they're actually damaged.
Okay. So C-Biter Big Active 4 would be really useful.
Yay! Because I'm sniping to abuse the system miles away.
Yay.
But yeah, there's as we mentioned before, Headbrain Schemes Battletech is an obvious example to take from. Yeah, they also did plenty more maps and biomes, more flashpoints. They added mission types just like they should, more mechs in the future, more equipment in the future. The path is already set, it's clear, and more options as difficulty, Iron Man, and adjusting difficulty.
Yeah,
all that kind of stuff, all the good stuff.
Okay. And then the final news where I think that was the point where I was at the end said, like, maybe I've talked a bit too much. They talked about clans, because obviously roughly half of the Battletech community likes the clans a lot, and they want it in the game. And basically he said you have to do clans well, you can't do them half-hearted. And clans are either going to be a very major expansion, or I don't think he said that like clearly, but he kind of hinted at it, clans might be a new game.
Yeah.
Which would potentially make some sense. If you stick with Unity engine, not Unity, Unreal engine, it shouldn't be too hard to upgrade from Unreal 4 to Unreal 5, keep most of your game logic, and just do a fresh campaign, put in the clans and sell it as a new game. That might be something they're looking at. It's probably going to be profitable to do
good
it.
business sense.
Yeah.
Also too, they have the groundwork already done. It's already done.
Yeah,
Everything's
and
done.
since they could use their chance to upgrade engine, they would also somewhat increase the longevity of the game. So I'm not necessarily opposed to them selling clans as Mechwarrior 6, though. Depending on how they execute
I don't
it.
mind. Basically, it's another
on
game.
average, yeah. Go ahead, Bob.
Oh no, it just it'd be another game, Mechwarrior 6. Okay, fine, cool. Plans will come in.
I think I agree with the direction very much, so that you don't just want to add them as a pack. Particularly, the big issue is, this thing has a timeline, and you have to go really far down the timeline. The clans actually show up. It's kind of the issue we have with Harebrained Schemes BattleTech, was sometimes you had to go quite a distance until the flashpoints you wanted popped up, or if we've added the Cyclops, well that's good, but I have to grind until late game until I actually see the damn thing. And that would be the same kind of issue with clans, that boy, I can't wait to play the same campaign beginning again for 50 hours until finally the clans show up. So it's not. I just don't feel there's a great incentive if you just have it as a DLC, adding in extra mechs. So, it makes a lot more sense to really do this properly, because I think the clans are the most obvious expansion route, and there's a lot of people who are a big fan of clans. It's the most obvious route to go for if you're going for a Mechwarrior 6.
And I absolutely hope when they implement clans, even if they do it as a major expansion, that could work as well, but do another campaign, do a second campaign to really feature the clans. So you don't have to start in 3015, whether you start in 3045 maybe. So you have like 2 or 3 years to start building up your mercenary outfits, or you're on medium level, and then once you reach medium level, it's 3048 and clans start happening. I think that could be a really cool setting.
Mercenaries for clans?
No, against clans.
Okay,
like
against
you're an Innisphere mercenary in the year 3045,
Okay.
and shortly after you start out, suddenly clans happen, and
maybe 2 campaigns.
You have to deal with that.
Because if you're late game as well, think you spent all this time building up this giant snowball, and it's just you have a lance of assault mechs, if not 2. As look, clans are turning up. Well, I haven't really got much use for clan lights and mediums other than stripping their double heat sinks out and their PPCs and strapping them into my Innisphere mechs.
Yeah, I think if they actually did another clan thing, they would actually make you play as a clanner. They wouldn't actually do like Innisphere versus clans. It'd be good for them. Maybe both might be an idea.
Here's the issue I have with clans. Clans don't really do mercenary style, and they don't really do like independent unit style as much as like you would limit freedom if you make someone play a clanner. They're gonna be within some kind of constraint. Even if you don't have a proper story of sorts and just let them follow the clan invasion, that would still be a limitation. It couldn't just fly over to Capellan space and attack the Chancellor. That's not something that would really make sense for a clanner. So that's why I like the idea of doing it in a sphere based as a mercenary, because you keep all the sandbox, you keep all the management, you keep the sea-builds, and you just fight clans. Or you could be employed by clans, who knows?
Well, quick question though. Could you, Mechwarrior 5 is obviously, it's built around money. Are there any clans that are known as the merchant clan? Isn't it Diamond Shark?
Diamond Shark,
Diamond Shark, Seafox.
Would Diamond Shark, they would be the most likely candidate, I think.
But even Diamond Sharks they're still clan.
Yeah.
So to get their mechs, they produce their own mechs. They fight over their titles and stuff like that, and they basically only use money to deal with Innisphere kind of deal. When they deal with other clans, it's really often still trial by combat.
The only thing that they can really do, though, the only thing that they could really do is like you're a part of a star, right? And then they have a really good story, and that's the only thing they could do. They did that for all the different other ones, Mech 2 on up, and so the story would have to be astronomically good. Yes. Basically, and so
exactly that's what I'm saying.
Because you can't
be a very limited linear story.
Yeah, you could have like you have your star, you have 5 mechs, basically, and you have to go fight Clan Wolf because you're part of Clan Jade Falcon because of this, and then also like you got attacked on your planet from a bunch of mercs, basically from Standard Space or something. They could do that way, but you wouldn't actually have unit management. You wouldn't have that kind of stuff. You might have limited type of unit.
You ditch the sandbox in favor of linear campaign missions with only a little bit of
the only other way where we could really do management would be if you go grand scale. You are a Star Colonel or Galaxy Commander, and you kind of manage your whole outfit and send units over to do stuff for you. But then you also have your personal star, which you take into combat.
Maybe.
But I think
they
that's
wouldn't do that,
way
no.
too grand a scale for a Mechwarrior title.
But that'll be interesting that they've done that before and it worked out pretty well and everyone liked it.
Or they could do your X character from the universe or a certain hero within the faction, and you have your personal star and you do this story. But then again, it would be very linear, and I honestly don't trust Pioneer Games at their current status to do a
good story,
really good campaign story.
Yeah, true. I don't know. Who knows? We'll find out what they do next. I guess when the clans come, I guess, or something. Or no, actually, we'll find out on launch day what they're gonna do. We'll find out beforehand. So,
okay. And I think beyond clans, we kind of talked about that the timeline is technically advancing, but there's nothing happening. So one of the other things we would be looking for future DLCs or expansion is the Fourth Succession War.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. That's one thing they actually kind of left out in the whole campaign of what's going on. Basically the game starts at 3015. But during the Fourth Succession War, Davion pretty much cut Lao in half, and so it would be interesting if they actually showed contracts in those zones of Lao being cut in half, and then basically you're part of that. You're part of doing that kind of thing just for lore wise. I think that'd be kind of cool.
On the Steiner side, attacking Corrida to secure the Lions farm, or even I forgot how it's called. Was it the Ronin Wars where the Republic of Reshelhack broke off?
Yeah, like Ronin Wars.
Yeah, stuff like that. Those kind of story DLCs. That's something that I would be very much looking forward to.
Yeah, then 3030 when the Duchy Arduin from Merrick Space and also MOC.
No one cares about Merrick Space.
And then Canopus basically had a war against that kind of thing. So, they need to add these in. They need to show this kind of stuff that actually happened in the Fourth Succession War, and this is missing from the game itself. That's a major part of BattleTech. Fourth Succession War, period. That's part of everything about BattleTech.
The Fourth Succession War, isn't that what kind of started the whole BattleTech thing?
No.
Wasn't that the starting point?
Well, that was the starting point, 3025.
Yeah,
so...
Yeah. You guys have been talking mech fans, BattleTech fans, but there's a new audience we have here.
No!
I think we should have Mechwarrior 5 Spreadsheet Edition. So instead of automatically updating your finances in the corner, you have to maintain your own spreadsheets.
God.
It should be a difficulty option.
I'm honestly thinking about it.
Spread Warrior.
I would play that for a bit. I wouldn't play it for a full campaign, but I would play that for some hours.
Being a mech fan that, like myself, I'd play too. Just because. It's just like, oh, cool, more Mechwarrior stuff.
You're just trying to really figure just doing the math, trying to add up everything you have to pay, and maybe a penalty when you don't pay a maintenance fee on your mech. The mech is no longer usable.
Remember to pay your space taxes. Remember to file, pay people on time.
Do this. Look at
it's stupid, but I would totally play it.
Yeah, we'll sell it on the fact it's immersion. You're building more immersion.
Yeah, there you go.
It's going to be all in-game UI. So, you spend a huge amount of money and buy a pocket calculator that you have in your little office. Like the office will actually be useful now. That's where you can do all the spreadsheets.
Now do this, man. If you ever played Mechwarrior, the role-playing game, the second edition.
Sorry, I just thought of a thing. Also, with Mechwarrior 5 Spreadsheet DLC, it gives your co-op partner something to do. You could go, click on repairs, this, that, and the other, while they manage your spreadsheets and help manage the company.
So, is that it, or anything else?
One final idea we already talked about a bit is BattleTech style events. I think that's something all of us could agree would be a great addition for Mechwarrior 5.
Yep.
Yeah.
It would be a new system, so definitely DLC rather than free patch, but I think it would help.
I think there's a lot of areas for improvement. One is obviously co-op. Give your co-op partners, we can already edit their mechs, but give them something to do in the dropship. You might as well improve the whole dropship just so it's more immersive there. Next aspect,
give us a Union class dropship.
Yeah.
Since we have 12 active mech base, give us a Union class.
Union class would be awesome.
The next big one, at least to touch on, would be things like the leveling up system and whatnot. I think I really wish you could have more customization for your main character and his co-pilots, much more in-depth. Like what they've got right now, I feel is quite a simple system. We want to have much more involved systems with the pilots. Make it much more worthwhile to invest in your pilots. Have them have traits just like in Harebrained Schemes BattleTech, that factor into events, like the whole event system we're talking about. Obviously, there's questions about the. I would think that I would have a second go at the balance of in the battlefield. Much more infotech type situations. Sensors. The player has more awareness of where enemies are coming from. Instead of just spawning them randomly, have them come from some preordained spawn points, things that make it give a better flow to battles, perhaps make the battlefields more open, and of course, as we mentioned, more objectives.
No, man, just take BattleTech, Harebrained Schemes, and put first-person shooter. That's what you got to do. That's it.
Well, that's what I'm saying though. More, we have mentioned just more optional objectives because you want the player to. You can do the contract and just do a simple run in, destroy one facility and go out. But if you decide to destroy more facilities, if you destroy more mechs and salvage and whatnot, you want it to be more engaging. I think we mentioned this last podcast. A big issue we had was with salvage. I think salvage, the mech lab and whatnot, needs a huge touch up.
Yeah.
I think just like some things like it's tie story missions to upgrades that the player's company experiences. They do have a couple upgrades, like repair times are shorter, which is a nice one. But I mean, real serious, meaningful upgrades that you're able to spend C-bills, for example, to upgrade your medium lasers or something like that. You're able to put more weapons within certain hardpoints that you're able to add hardpoints to mechs, things like that. As your company becomes more experienced, has more reputation, and completes more of the story, I think they should totally improve give the player more to their progression than just bigger mechs.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that they can improve. That's my issue about the game. Well, they could definitely improve the game. It's good, but it's not. Yes, good. They have so much room for improvement that I mean, they implement a couple of these things like, oh my god, this is the best game since Harebrained Schemes BattleTech. I don't think they actually do, but anyways, so
they have a tall mountain to climb
they have a really tall
equate
mountain.
Harebrained Schemes BattleTech, but the path is there. We see how it could be done.
Yeah, true, definitely.
Because I would totally love, just like the same system, Argo upgrades, Leopard dropship upgrades, even if it's not tied to story missions. Yeah, or Union dropship or whatnot. Just the simple idea of, my people are spending forever being injured. Well, I'm going to upgrade the medical facilities.
Yeah.
It just makes sense to me, but you don't have that option.
Or buy a Excalibur dropship, 36 mechs type thing. Aerospace fighters, to go protect your dropships when you go into planet. Just things like that. Kind of cool.
XCOM system where you press launch your fighter, and then you see this tiny animation of pew pew pew.
One of the conceits though of having a leopard is that's why you're always only having 4 mechs jumping out rather than 2 lancers, even though you have if you upgrade your dropship to a Union class, it's like I've got 12 mechs, they could jump out, and I have 12 mech pilots ready to go, but I can't do it. And the tonnage restrictions, this arbitrary tonnage restrictions, 200.
Maybe do it this way, where you drop the Union dropship down, right? You have 3 different missions. You send 1 lance for each mission that's out there. You got to play through 3 different missions. They have that now, like with the quest system. So that'd be interesting.
Sure.
I don't know. Who knows? There's a lot of things.
It would be cool. I mean, there's a subsequent mission system. If you had a scouting mission first and a big old offensive afterwards, you can do stuff like that.
Yeah. There's a lot of things.
Because missions as well. I think we have touched on, but it's just always barge in, finish the objective, and run out, and that's always all the thing. There's optional objectives, but I think Harebrained Schemes BattleTech did lots of things like adding in multiple factions already fighting each other.
Yeah.
And for them at least, make when enemy reinforcements arrive be a big deal rather than just a fact of life. That's always going on.
Yeah.
And just more variety in those missions. Like hell, there's Harebrained Schemes Battletech. You have missions where you're given three mechs, from your whoever you're allied with, and you only get to choose one. That's kind of fun in a way. Like it's add a lot more variety to the missions and how they play out.
True.
I can't tell. Are you trying to match the bite, or are you trying to...
I'm looking at you.
You're the only one in the camera, so he's looking at you.
God damn it. All right.
That's the power of no camera.
I guess at that point we should kind of wrap up the First Circuit podcast episode number 110, mostly because we still have a 3-hour limit on SoundCloud, so we can't go over, we can't run long.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you all for listening to this episode. We talked a fair bit about Mechwarrior 5 again. Hopefully, with the next episode, next year, we're gonna try and get some structure in, talk about certain topics. If you have anything you want us to talk about, feel absolutely free to leave a comment. Contact us on Twitter. That's usually a really good way to get our attention. Or just drop it in the YouTube comments. I think Bob is checking those on a regular basis as well.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, since this is going to be the episode before New Year, actually, Monday, so Tuesday. So when you're watching this on release day, tomorrow is going to be New Year. So you guys, thank you very much for sticking with us for this full year. I think 2019 was an amazing year for the First Circuit podcast. I'm certainly really happy to be part of this, and I'm super thankful for all of you guys supporting us throughout this long time. Also, I guess while we're at it, thanks to you guys as my co-hosts for making me a part of this. And we hope you get an amazing start into the next it's not century, the next decade.
Next decade, yeah.
Good start into 2020.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very happy.
Feel free to add your stuff.
I'm very happy myself, basically, of how the First Circuit podcast actually came. I mean, can't believe 10 episodes now. That's crazy. And for you guys, supporting us through the First Circuit podcast, and of course the hosts. I mean, Ian and Biter and Large. I mean, dude, you guys are amazing. You guys don't even understand how great you guys are, and take initiative doing things and like all that kind of stuff. Because I'm busy as hell sometimes, and like I just shut down, I guess, like sometimes, and I do appreciate that. You guys like stepping up, man. That's awesome. You guys do a great job with the First Circuit podcast, and thank you so much, man.
Yep. We'll have to wait and see, of course, how things are turning out for. Well, I'll just say the same thing again. It's great being a part of the podcast, and it's the end of a year, and there'll be a new one soon.
Damn it, Spider! Stop being British. Stop being wholesome.
If you want some wholesome stuff, I don't know. New Year's resolutions for the podcast. Worse audio quality, less cameras, less games to talk about, more whining about Piranha games. That's always good.
We might change some topics later on for next year as well too. So different things like anime or cartoons, something like that. We're not sure yet. So, you guys got any comments? Down below.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see, since they did mention Mechwarrior Online that they're obviously going to focus on patching Mechwarrior 5 and their first DLCs and whatnot, but they do still remember Mechwarrior Online exists, and they still do want to support it, and they have no idea what they're going to do next for it. But don't worry, guys. Mechwarrior Online, I don't know. All I want from Mechwarrior Online is for them to unnerf Narcs, and then I would return to the game.
And scouting.
Yeah.
So you guys have a good night. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel and for everything you guys do. Thank you so much, and we will see you on the battlefield.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Go on.